Hello, internet friend. Welcome to my Let's Play of Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver. This is one of my favorite video games of all time. I've wanted to do a Let's Play of this game for a while, but I wanted to make sure I got the best version of the game, which is the Dreamcast version. And it is actually the first version I ever played, so I'm really excited to show it to you. The Dreamcast version is better than the version you can get on Steam right now, which is actually just a PC port of the PlayStation version. This version was up-resed and has better sound quality, better compression on stuff, and it's difficult to capture video from a Dreamcast in HD. I finally got my hands on a device that can do it, thanks to John Riggs, which I'll just put a link to John Riggs' video down below, so you can see this thing in action and maybe pick up one yourself if you want one. So let's go ahead and get started here. Yeah, so I hope by the end of this you'll understand why this is one of my favorite games of all time. And so here we go.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Kain and my brethren at the dawn of the Empire. I have served him a millennium. Over time, we became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome. My eternal damnation. I, Raziel, was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, to burn forever in the bowels of the Lake of the Dead.
Cast him in.
Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. An eternity passed, and my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Raziel, you are worthy.
Why wouldn't he wrap the cloth around his waist? Just Just curious. I don't know.
I know you, Razier. You are worthy.
What madness is this? What pitiful form is this that I have come to inhabit? Death would be a release next to this travesty.
You did not survive the abyss, Razier. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
I would choose oblivion over this existence.
The choice is not yours.
I am destroyed.
You are reborn. The birth of one of Kain's abominations traps the essence of life. It is this soul that animates the corpse you lived in. And that, Raziel, is the demise of Nosgoth. There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the wheel of fate. They cannot complete their destinies. Redeem yourself. Or if you prefer, avenge yourself. Settle your dispute with Kain. Destroy him and your brethren. Free their souls and let the wheel of fate churn again. Use your hatred to reave their souls. I can make it possible. Become my Soul Reaver, my angel of death.
And that, of course, I felt a little blasphemous to talk during the monologue of the Elder God, voiced by the late great Tony J, a voice acting god in his own right. He is a veteran of the Legacy of Kain series, having played Mortanius, who was also connected with the concept of death in the first Blood Omen game. And he also played a similar role, Mortanius did, to this Elder God. He's sort of the guy who is giving you instruction. So, if you didn't know, this is the second in a series of games called Legacy of Kain, and I'm about to spoil the first Legacy of Kain for you, but I still recommend that you run out and play that one if you can find a copy. So, in the first Legacy of Kain, you play as a vampire named Kain, who has to travel around Nosgoth, killing 9 pillar guardians and restoring their pillars, because the pillars of Nosgoth are a sort of, a beacon of reality, I guess, that helps keep the world together, keeps the world functioning normally. And each of these pillar guardians they're basically a wizard that controls various aspects of the world. There was one that controlled death, and one that controlled mentalism. There was a druid and who controlled nature, that kind of stuff. And Kain basically went through, had an adventure, collected lots of fun loot, including some of the things you saw in the intro. The earring he wears in his ear is actually an earring belonging to Vorador, who is the oldest vampire alive at the time of that Blood Omen game. And he also had 3 fingers and presumably 2 toes, which is something that happens to vampires in this world as they age. And that ring actually would summon Vorador to aid Kain in specific fights during the game. He also collected the Soul Reaver, the titular Soul Reaver, which was, basically a sword that eats souls, in the grand tradition of fantasy weapons that consume souls. And we're going to get intimately acquainted with that sword soon. But I digress. Basically, throughout his adventure, he eventually gets to the last Pillar Guardian and finds out that it is none other than himself. So he has a choice to make, Kain. to either kill himself and heal the world, or stay alive and rule the world. This ruined world that he created. And of course, in this game, the canonical ending of Blood Omen is that Kain decided, no, I'm going to go ahead and rule this ruined world as its master, and he creates different clans of vampires to help him conquer it, and eventually conquers it, and begins shaping the world to be more fitting for vampires. For instance, he goes to a Dark Eden, which was a location in the first Blood Omen, and starts just pumping smoke into the atmosphere, and that's something you can actually see in the intro if you're sharp enough. And so by pumping smoke into the atmosphere, it allows him to, basically it allows the more powerful vampires to be out during the daytime. Weaker vampires still have a problem with sunlight, but with the more powerful ones, they can be out during the day. And so basically, when as a vampire ages in this world, they kind of turn into these Ninja Turtle-looking things that you saw in the intro. Well, Ninja Turtles in hands and feet. These kind of hooved feet. And the reason for that is kind of not quite been explained. It's sort of been explained, but not exactly. But essentially they enter a sort of torpor, and we're going to see some different cocoons as we go throughout this game. They enter like a cocoon and they come out changed. And one day Raziel went into his cocoon and came out with a pair of wings, and you're all caught up. Raziel, of course, being one of his generals, all that. You saw the intro. You get it. Now the question is, did Kain rip those wings off out of jealousy, or was there something else going on? Guess we'll have to find out.
These gates twist space, laying a path across great spans.
Okay, so this is the fast travel system of this game, and it works pretty... The way it works is pretty impressive for the time. I was pretty amazed, because when I unlock another area, I'll show it off, but it's kind of like pre-portal, and there's no loading time or anything. You just kind of go through it, and you're there. It's great. Now we're gonna go over here and learn how to eat, because we forgot how.
You are weak. You must feed.
The old hunger has left me. I have no desire for blood.
You are changed. Your bloodthirst is replaced by a deeper need. You have become a devourer of souls. To sustain your strength, you must hunt the lost spirits of the underworld and consume the souls of your enemies.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and hit B to feed. B to feed. Yum. Alright. Now that we're all full of goodness, we're going to go through this jumping tutorial that I'm just going to blow through because I already know how to do all this. That's one thing about this game that really holds up, is these jumping mechanics feel really solid.
Your wings, though ruined, are not without purpose. Take hold of them as you leap, and they will carry you across this chasm.
And what platforming game would be complete without some sort of double jump or flying ability? And of course, Raziel's bizarre wings are still pretty useful, all things considered.
What scabrous wretches are these?
Sure, the scavengers of the underworld. Their feral hunger has claimed countless souls, spirits who now shall never find their rest.
Alright, so the Slua are actually named after a type of fairy from Scottish mythology that basically they fly around at night and carry weary travelers off to the land of fairies. And they have kind of become a staple of the Legacy of Kain game, at least as far as Raziel's concerned. And of course they are the peon enemies that you have to face in order to gain your health back and protect yourself when you're in the spirit realm. These guys always drive me crazy. I don't really have to kill every enemy in the game, but it's a lot of fun too. There we go. Get in my belly, Slimer. There we go. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and move on. And of course, this next tutorial tells us how to shift back into the real world.
These portals are your conduit between the spectral and material realms. With their aid, you may gather matter and will yourself to become manifest in the physical world. This is taxing, however. Your strength must first be fully restored. You require no conduit to return to this plane. You may abandon your physical body at any time.
Alright, so he basically explained that these are sort of portals that allow him to gather matter around himself and become physical. One thing I want to point out here is you can see these pillars here are all kind of curved in, sort of like a rib cage. And when we shift back into the real world, you'll see them kind of go back to being, or they'll go to being from these kind of curved rib-looking things into normal-looking pillars. And that is sort of a mechanic that you use throughout the game. The shifting geometry of the world actually allows you to solve puzzles and stuff later on. And that sort of world warping between the real world and the spirit world is inspired by a black and white movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And it's a really cool movie. You should go watch it after you're done watching this. It's probably free on YouTube somewhere because it's an old black and white silent film that is probably in the public domain now. And you'll notice one of the characters in it, called the Sleepwalker, looks quite a bit like Raziel here. And in fact, you're going to see a lot of stuff in that movie that look familiar if you've ever seen a Tim Burton movie. So definitely give it a watch and find out where Tim Burton stole all his best stuff from. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to the world of living.
Strength to prolong your manifestation in the physical world. If you fail to feed or absorb too many wounds, this fragile matter will dissolve.
Good to know. So we've got a couple teaser things here. We obviously can't open this gate. And boy, this wall over here looks really weird. Oh well. And then of course, with the warping world, the world warping, when we shifted over, this is actually where we came from. And it's closed off to us right now, so we have to keep moving forward. And now we're going to learn about one of the Nosgoth vampire's weaknesses.
You are young yet, Raziel. You still retain many of your vampiric weaknesses. Immersion in water, while not fatal, will dissolve your physical body, forcing your return to the spirit world. Be aware that in the spectral realm, water has neither heft nor lift. It stands as thin as air.
So that's kind of setting up the idea that, well, two things. One, vampires in this world are hurt by water, which is... Vampires in water have a kind of a weird history as far as mythology is concerned. And, I can touch it, but I can't. If I dunked myself in it, that would have been real bad. Vampires in water have a weird history as far as mythology is concerned. There's a lot of different ideas about vampires in water. Obviously holy water, but also vampires not being able to cross rivers is common among vampire lore and whatnot. So it's kind of translated into the Legacy of Kain games as vampires are hurt by all water. Which, when you consider that blood is mostly water, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but try not to think about it. Oh, also, when you enter the spirit world, water really doesn't have any sort of, like, weight to it. It's just like air, so you basically just pass through it the same way you would air. Later on, you'll gain the ability to swim, but for now, you have to avoid submersion in water at all costs. It's like being a kid and having tubes in your ears. Except way more painful.
What are these creatures?
Do you not recognize them? They are the children of your brother, Duma.
That's impossible. These foul, scuttling beasts could not be kin of our high blood?
Do you suppose that time stood still for you, Raziel? Much has changed since you passed from the world of men.
Okay, and this is kind of an introduction to two of the least popular things about this game, the two most criticized things in this game. The first one is the combat system.
I knew my opponent's weaknesses, having suffered them myself. Physical wounds are fleeting. A vampire's immortal flesh begins to close as soon as it is cleaved. Vampires need only fear those wounds that impale or inflame. Water scorches like acid, and fledglings are devastated by sunlight's touch. I would have to modify my tactics to suit my foes.
So basically, combat in this game is just weakening these guys until you can pick them up and throw them into something that will kill them.
From the flesh, a creature's soul fades swiftly into the spectral realm. Draw it in quickly, Raziel, or you will be compelled to follow.
And then, of course, you have to eat their soul, or they just come back. It sure is nice of this guy to stand there and let me... Oh. The trick is, if you hold the button down, you can pick them up for a little bit. Just kind of aim your shot. And it kind of auto-targets onto spikes like that, so it's pretty handy. Not as hard as you'd think. But a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like the idea that you kind of have to basically treat every combat situation like a puzzle. Like, how do I kill this guy? Well, you know, just look around the room, look for something spiky, and throw the dude right at it. Here's the next thing.
Surpasses what you knew in life. Even massive obstacles can be moved effortlessly.
So, this is the block puzzles, the infamous Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver block puzzles. Legend has it that when they were kind of designing the physics for this game, they came up with all kinds of fun stuff to play around with, most of which ended up in the game, but everyone really liked, you know, moving these blocks around. There's lots of interesting ways that you can kind of flip them around and you know, push them and flip them and get up on them on accident. People, I guess the people designing the levels, they all went off and designed different parts of the game world, and when they all got back together, they realized, oh man, we all use these block puzzles. we all made block puzzles. So we're gonna do a lot of block puzzles in this game. We're gonna be masters of moving those blocks around, but by the time this is done. So yeah, it's some people think it's annoying. I think it's kind of fun. And I kind of miss it in other games. I also miss the vampire combat in other games. You see, you can pick up a lot of different things as weapons, like this torch here that I'm about to use on a fool.
My God! The sanctuary of the clans reduced to ruin. Beyond these walls lay the pillars of Nosgoth, the seat of Kain's empire. How humble it now appeared, collapsing into the dust of its former magnificence. And yet, I had only just emerged. In the instant between my execution and resurrection, centuries had apparently passed.
This world is wrecked with cataclysms. The earth strains to shrug off the pestilence of Kain's parasitic empire. The fate of this world was preordained in an instant by a solitary man. Unwilling to martyr himself to restore Nosgoth's balance, Kain condemned the world to the decay you see. In that moment, the unraveling began. Now it is nearly played out. Nosgoth teeters on the brink of collapse. Its fragile balance cannot hold.
So yeah, just kind of giving you more of the backstory there of Kain decided not to sacrifice himself, and now we're like 1,000 years into his rule at this point, and things are really starting to fall apart. So these torches are kind of a one-time use thing, but you can, if you find an open fire pit like this, relight it, which is kind of cool. Personally, I prefer these things because they are reusable, and you can find them pretty much everywhere. You impale them, and you eat them. If you do not eat them, I'll show you what happens. If you don't eat their soul, and they find a way to come back, like, I'm not going to eat his soul, and you can watch what happens. Comes right back to life, didn't he? Yep. That's something they play around with throughout the game, the idea that if you don't eat the soul of a vampire, they will come back to life. So you'll run into situations where there'll just be a vampire underwater, and you'll lower the water level, and the vampires will come to life and start attacking you. So it's a neat thing they mess around with. There's a sort of just a coherent logic to the game world that I really like and appreciate, even in one of these older games. Now these crows, in other Legacy of Kain games, crows are sort of symbolic of Vorador. They are sort of his messengers. It's similar to Odin. They go out and get information for Vorador. I don't think that's what they are in this game. Because it's pretty much established that Vorador is dead at this point, but he may not be. It may be that there's a reason why Kain still has that ring that Vorador gave him. but who knows? Personally, I just think the crows represent the fact that the world is decaying, and they're just sort of picking at the bones of the dead. But who knows? Maybe someday we'll get a sequel to this series and find out these crows are a bit more significant than they appear. Alright, so now we're going to use this here fast travel. Well, we're not going to use it. We're going to go ahead and activate it, and then we'll use it in a second. I want to show you guys something. Okay, so now that that's activated, I'm going to go ahead and save my game. Always a good idea to save your game in these older games, because this game was made before autosave became standard. So when you're playing an older game, make sure you're saving your game as often as necessary. I usually save my game every time I save my game every time I die, or every time I make it to one of those fast travel areas. So that's kind of my rule. These guys are, they mentioned it earlier, they are the sons of Dumas, the Dumas-im. They use the Old English "im" suffix to denote the different types of vampires and whose clan they belong to. So Dumas-im, which means son of Dumas.
This, at least, had remained constant. The endlessly swirling vortex of the abyss. My tomb and the womb of my rebirth. Though much of Nosgoth's landscape had changed, these cliffs gave me my bearings. My clan territory was to the west. I was anxious to see how my descendants had fared during the centuries of my absence.
Alright, so we'll go take a look and see how Raziel's kingdom is doing in a second. First, I want to show you guys a fun shortcut to the Elder God. Here we go!
As my agent, you are beyond death, Raziel. Your enemies cannot destroy you. If you grow too weak, however, you will always be drawn here to recover.
I just thought that would be a fun thing to show off, and also show off kind of the death mechanic in this game. If you ever run out of life while you're in the physical world, you return to the spirit world. And then if you run out of all your life in the spirit world, like if you know the Slua take too many pot shots at you, you end up right back here. So you don't really die in this game. You just sort of end up back at the start. And as long as you're activating those fast travel beacons, you're fine. And another advantage to coming back here is that you can get hints from the Elder God. So here's how you do that.
Talents to gain entry where you have been otherwise impeded.
And that's just kind of a generic message that he gets more specific later on. It's like, no duh, I need to use my newfound talents to go where I've otherwise been impeded. All that, whatever. Okay, so fast travel. Now, you know, there's different fast travel locations throughout the world, and you can kind of see, I can find all these as I go throughout the game. But this is the one that I just activated, and you can see I'm down here, but then I walk through here, portal style, and now I'm here. Now that's probably not very impressive in a post-portal world, but by God, just walking through there, no loading times, no nothing, that was pretty dope. You know, PlayStation 1, Dreamcast era, so yeah. We were all really impressed by that back then. And we're just gonna kind of run past this guy. You don't have to fight all the enemies in this game. If your health is full, there's really no reason to. They don't chase you very far. So we're gonna go check in on how our clan's doing. Well, let's just look at this beautiful vista while we're at it. Yeah, look at all that lovely, lovely fog that kind of permeates all 3D games from this era. It's just a great, great illusion of space in that area. There we go. Nom. Grab my spear. Always make sure you're carrying a spear. Always be spearing. Of course, situations like this, you do have to fight the enemies, of course. Ooh, jeez. For some reason, I didn't get to eat their souls. I'm not going to complain, though. I'm doing all right. Now, the Dumas-M, the reason they are just sort of scattered throughout the world will become apparent later on in the game. But suffice to say, something has happened to Dumas, and we will eventually find that out.
Utter desolation. My once proud kin wiped from this world like excrement from a boot. I knew the hand that wrought this deed.
Alright, so we're gonna get in another fight here. We're fighting! Alright. Let's go ahead and activate another fast travel. Of course, this one bears the clan symbol of Raziel, which you can see on my scarf there. And of course, Raziel's clan was apparently wiped out by Kain. Was it a fit of jealousy? It's not. It would seem that way. Later, there was a sort of a character-based, a character-driven multiplayer game called Nosgoth that sort of brought the Razielem back as a flying class of vampire. I never played that game because it wasn't it didn't seem to be canon with this series. It's not clear whether or not, you know, any of that lore even matters, or if there even was any lore other than just to say, this is this kind of vampire and this is that kind of vampire. And it did seem like they confused a lot of the vampire clans, got a lot of their powers mixed up between the different types of vampires. So it just didn't seem like they cared about the Legacy of Kain series. They just wanted to put the name Nosgoth on their game and just sort of use a lot of the names of characters and settings. And they do use some stuff that was fun to see in a more updated version, but the lore seems, to me, is what's most important. And then, of course, continuing this story is what real fans want. We can get our character action shooters in other places. Always got to be sneaky around corners. Let's see here. So yeah, I mean, the spears end up being the weapon that you use most of the time. There are other weapons in the game. For instance, these rocks can be picked up and thrown. But for the most part, I mean, these spears are like the most versatile. Rocks really only stun enemies. They're not very useful. We're gonna go ahead and head up here. Wonder what this thing could be. Guess we'll find out when we gather some more powers, because this game is kind of a Metroidvania game. And that actually is a kind of puzzle piece that I can't manipulate yet. Okay, coming up is our first introduction to Melchiam.